Hello and welcome back to my podcast. My name is Celeste. I am the Prairie Knitter and I'm from Central Alberta, and this is my 5th podcast episode. I missed a little bit of time last week. We had some technical difficulties and some physical illness, and I just decided, you know what, let's wait. We'll wait till next week and we'll put out a podcast that I'm really comfortable with and I think is really the quality that I want to release. I have obviously a standard for myself as to what I'm willing to put on the internet and what kind of content I want to put out to my subscribers. There's already so many more of you than I expected there would be. Just like, I don't know, this is I think the 8th video that I've put up. I know there's a lot of accounts on YouTube that grow at alarming speed. Mine hasn't been one of them, but I'm honestly still so thrilled with the direction it's gone in. I'm really enjoying learning new things, kind of getting a feel for what I like when filming, what I like to talk about, what order I like to go in, what things I need to remember the next time I film. I definitely have had some moments where I'm like, oh, I completely forgot to talk about that, or I missed a critical detail about that pattern, and then getting to learn and be better the next time is such a cool thing. I keep talking with my hands and they're not showing up in frame very well, so bear with me. I've definitely mussed with my setup a little bit to try and get it a little bit better lit, a little bit easier to work with, and yeah, so let's jump right into this podcast episode. And we'll start with what I'm wearing. So this is my Aran Weight Gallant sweater by Kadri. Aran Weight Gallant sweater. There we go. Try saying that 5 times fast, and it's probably only me who can't. But I'll stand up so you can see the full sweater, or at least most of it. Okay, there we go. So this is the Gallant sweater. This is knit with Cascade Eco Plus. And yeah, it definitely has had some pilling. You can see under the arm we've got a significant amount of pilling. The front has been largely unscathed. It is a pretty fluffy yarn. The fit leaves a little to be desired. The raglan is just a little too deep for my preferences, I think. Yeah, like, so my underarm is about here and then the raglan still goes way down, and I just don't love that fit. It's comfortable, it's cozy, it's more of a sweatshirt, it's less of a like super fancy sweater. I added some short rows to the neckline because it doesn't have any, and I felt like I wanted the back to sit a little higher than the front does, so that was a modification I made. And yeah, so it's a top down raglan construction, and it's then you pick the sleeves up and knit them all the way down. Everything is finished with an I-cord edge, so that's at the bottom. It does curl a little bit. It's not incredibly noticeable in my opinion. I tend to tuck it into my jeans anyways, and I feel like this sweater is the perfect length in that regard to tuck into my pants, which is really nice because that's what I tend to like to do with my high-waisted jeans. The sleeves are a touch short. Like you'll see here, they look fine, but I have noticed throughout wear, or if I move, I've actually got a shirt underneath, so they're behaving a little bit better. But if I'm not wearing a shirt underneath, I find they tend to come up quite a bit, so that they're not like, they're not horribly short, but they're short enough that they irritate me. I've definitely learned, I made this a while back. I think, I want to say I finished it in like February or something like that, but I've learned a lot since then about what I like in my garments and where I can compromise and where I can't. Length of sleeves tends to be somewhere I can't. And numerous times I thought that, oh, it'll block and they'll grow and they'll be too long. So I gotta knit them a little bit shorter because I do have short arms. I'm only 5'2". My arms aren't incredibly long. So I thought, oh, well, if anything's gonna grow, we don't want unwearable sleeves, we want a really good length. So I would often end up shortening my sleeves too much, blocking it, they wouldn't grow as much as I thought, and then I was left with just long enough sleeves, and that's not really what I'm looking for. So In some of the finished objects now that I have that have sleeves, I've been more careful not to bank on something growing and blocking a lot, and more just to get them to a length I'm happy with, just enough that if they grow a little bit, it's fine, but if not, I'm not disappointed. I'm not left with sleeves that I have to either frog back or just live with and not be thrilled about. So I've definitely learned something in regards to my sleeve preferences. I definitely had run into this a lot in my early projects too, where I'd get really eager. I'd finish the yoke, I'd be working on the body, or I'd be working on a sleeve, and I'd just be so eager to either move on to the next part of the project or to cast it off and be finished with it, just because I wanted to wear it. I was really excited. And I noticed that repeatedly I was coming out with cropped stuff, whether it was a cropped sleeve or a cropped garment in general, where like the length of the body wasn't long enough. I was getting cropped items, and more cropped than I was comfortable with, in such a way that I felt like I was constantly pulling things down. Like I knit a Semper sweater v-neck, and I'm constantly pulling that down. Not only that, but the bind off's too tight, so that's another problem. But I am really hoping, that's by the Knit Pearl Girl, and she is teasing a test knit for a reworked Semper sweater, I believe. So I would love to do a crew neck version and re-knit that and try to get a better fit than I got the first time. Not the pattern's fault at all, completely my own error. My impatience really got the best of me. So yeah, little side tangent about my issue with cropping things that shouldn't be cropped. But I'm finally kind of getting to the point in my knitting where I'm a little bit more patient, and I'm a little more willing to stick it out and knit for as long as I need to get a piece I'm actually going to love and wear the heck out of. So I still wear this Gallant sweater. I still like it. It's really comfortable. It's not itchy. I find it works great, especially if I'm lounging around the house. So it's definitely not a flop, but there were things I could have done better. I don't love the rigidity of the neckline, or rather the lack thereof. It's quite floppy, and I find that sometimes it'll bend weird and it'll look odd, and just the edge isn't quite finished the way I would like. So I think if I were to re-knit this, I'd revisit that, because I'm not entirely sure. I don't seem to remember if there was actually finishings on the neck or if it was just the cast on. Excuse me. So I'll have to double check that for you. But this is my Gallant sweater knit in Cascade Eco Plus. This pattern does call for a bulky weight yarn, which I believe is what Cascade Eco Plus is. It's a 13 stitch by 19 row gauge over 4 inches, and it calls for a 6.5mm needle. She does have sizes extra small to 5XL, so it's pretty size inclusive. There's a lot of range there, which is really great. And I believe the suggested yarn is Knit Picks Aloft or Drops Air or Wool in the Gang Feeling Good. Now, I don't have access to Knit Picks in an affordable way, I think. Like, I'm really hesitant to order anything from the States, especially now with the tariff situation, and I'm just more focusing on Canadian brands. But even before then, I was really hesitant to buy from the States, just due to the fact that I never quite knew how much duty was going to be, and I wasn't always willing to take the risk that I'd buy some yarn that was in my budget and then get it shipped to me and find out, oh, there's an extra $30 in duties that I have to pay now. I just wasn't really interested in taking that risk. That stressed me out a lot, so I didn't go with Knit Picks Aloft. I would love to try Knit Picks one day. It just hasn't come yet. That day hasn't come, and maybe one day we'll get there, but yeah, not yet. So I went with Cascade Eco Plus. I got this on sale from a store in Alberta that was going out of business, and I got 2 skeins, and I probably could have gotten away with 1. There is a lot of yarn in 1 skein of Cascade Eco Plus, and since I got it on sale, it was a really good deal. So that was a really good find. And though the pilling is a little bit, leaves something to be desired, I have found that in general soft yarns just pill more. So if you want a really soft yarn, that's especially if it's not paired with a mohair, you're probably going to look at a lot more pilling than you would if you had something a little bit coarser. Like my Eva cardigan is knit in pure Gint. I've not seen any pilling, and I've worn that so many times, like so much wear for that one sweater. I throw it on all the time, and I actually checked the underarms because I was like, oh, I've been wearing this a lot, like, is it holding up? And so far I've not seen any pilling, so that's impressive. But it just goes to show, like, when you have a more rustic yarn and you have a softer yarn, you're probably going to see more pilling with that softer yarn than you will the rustic yarn. So that was something I learned with this. But you live and you learn, and I don't regret that it's cozy and warm and soft. I think it'll be lovely during Christmas to like throw over some comfy PJs if I'm cold, or even just have with jeans when I'm feeling a little bit more casual for the day. I do believe I knit this on recommended needles. I just had to check on my laptop to make sure. I haven't quite figured out a good way to like put show notes in front of me in a way that I'm not leaning forward to get to them. So we'll have to figure that out eventually. But for now, it's on my laptop and I can take a peek if I forget something. But I believe I knit this on the recommended needles. I knit the size 2XL for my 44-inch bust. Honestly, I don't remember if I was knitting with the recommended ease or not. I tend not to stick to recommended ease, especially not now, just because I tend to have a disproportionately large bust. There's about 7 or 8 inches in between my my bust and my underbust, which can definitely cause fit issues when something is primarily based on your bust measurement, your full bust measurement. If your underbust is dramatically different, which, I don't know, dramatic is a subjective term, but to me it's significant, and so I often don't follow recommended ease, because if I have the recommended ease around my bust, I have way too much everywhere else. So this was knit in the colorway Shire, which is a really lovely dark green. It's been one of my hyperfixation colors, I guess, for this year. 2025. I don't know if 2026 will have a different hyperfixation color, if I'll pick something and I'm like, that's my color for the year. But this year it was definitely dark green. I bought a lot of clothes in this. I knit clothes in this. I am obsessed with dark green, and so that's the colorway Shire. And I did just check the measurements for what it's supposed to be. I haven't measured this, honestly. I'm not good at measuring my patterns after I have like my finished objects. I don't usually measure them. I think I've measured like one finished object after the fact, and that's because I was really nervous it wasn't going to be right. It was going to look weird. Sure enough, it was actually spot on. Thank you to my gauge swatch. Gauge swatches have failed me in the past, and that wasn't what I completed, so I was a little bit skeptical that I was going to run into some pretty interesting issues. I was very nervous because it was a piece it was all over texture. It was my staff in light, and it was a t-shirt, and I blocked it and I looked at it and I'm like, that's huge. It's ruined. It's too big. It was a super wash. I was like, well, I guess we'll measure it and hopefully it's not as bad as I think it is. And honestly, it wasn't. Anyways, tangent. So the 2XL is a finished sweater circumference of 53 inches. So that would be about 7 inches of ease. And I think it calls for, oh no, she lists it in centimeters. I don't do centimeters well. I'm Canadian too, I should, but everything to me is in inches, and that's really bad. I feel like I should be more faithful to the metric system. I'm not. I love inches and feet. I measure everything in inches. And when there's a pattern that's only in centimeters, I have a few conversions memorized for like my measurements and stuff, but I just don't use it. I don't know why. We grew up using it in school, but I'm just looking at the pattern to try and see. So 135 centimeters, and I'm roughly 112. So I did do about the recommended ease. So I probably picked the right size for what the measurements called for. But I think if I were to reknit this, I'd probably size down to an XL, maybe a large, but I feel like that might be too tight. Like if you're going for a comfy sweater, you don't want a super loose sweater like this all the time. And like I said, the armholes or the issue I have. They're just too deep, but there's always the possibility of connecting in the round a little bit sooner and continuing with body raglan increases. That's definitely a possibility if you're ever like, you know, these sleeves are going to be massive, but I really do need more bust circumference, or I want more ease around the bust. So maybe you, instead of splitting for sleeves and joining in the round and stopping your raglan increases, you split for sleeves, join in the round, but continue the body raglan increases and just stop increasing for the sleeves. I don't know if that would work. I've not actually tried that yet, but that is one of my theories on how to make a raglan fit a little bit better with, again, a bit of a disproportionate bust to under bust ratio. So that is my Gallant sweater. I don't think there's anything more to say about this one. I feel like I've covered everything, and I've definitely yapped for a minute about this, but I think we've touched on everything. If there's something that you have questions about in regards to this pattern or this sweater, please let me know in the comments and I will answer everyone. I definitely enjoyed Kadri's pattern writing, and I would love to knit another pattern by her, but so far I haven't gotten to it yet. I am hoping to knit her her lake sweater, I believe. Oh no, is that by Ozetta? That might be that's by Ozetta. I'm mixing things up. I'm mixing up designers. Ignore that. But let's move on to my work in progress. This one you have already seen, and there's a little bit of a status update on it. It is moving along, and that is my Amy sweater. Okay, I want to get this sorted in a way that it's easy to show. It is I did split for sleeves. Actually, that was last time I showed you this sweater, and I do want to find the front and the back. There's fuzz on it, it's on my couch. Okay, so this is my Amy sweater. Let's get there. I can see what I'm showing you. It's definitely getting longer. I think it needs about an inch or two more on the body before I start the ribbing, but then it'll be ribbing. This is a top-down raglan construction. I really enjoyed the construction. It's got short rows. No, it doesn't have short rows, but you don't join in the round immediately. You do work back and forth a little bit to make sure that the back is a little bit longer than the front, and then I put the collar on right away once I'd had a little bit of length through these raglan increases, and the collar is quite a bit of 2x2 rib. You continue with your raglan increases, you split for sleeves, put the sleeve stitches on hold, and then just knit stockinette in the round all the way down until you're ready to do your ribbing, which again, 2x2, and I believe I'm knitting on the recommended needles. Let's double check that, shall we? Yes, I am knitting on the recommended needles. It calls for 4mm needles for the body and 3.5mm needles for the ribbing. And I am knitting this in Barocco Vintage DK. This is the color Tide Pool, and this skein is really falling apart. It does not want to stay together, and I definitely have to like half wind it when it's just on the couch with me when I'm knitting. But this has been like my hockey knitting. It's very mindless. It's just stockinette in the round for as long as I really want it to be. And yeah, it's moving a little bit slower. I've had a couple of other things take my attention. We decorated for Christmas. That was like half my Saturday last week, and obviously I do have a full-time job, and we've had things with church, so I've been reasonably busy, but I have been trying to like pick away at the stockinette when I can. So I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm eager to switch to like the ribbing or to the sleeves, and I'm really trying to avoid, like I mentioned before, that issue of getting impatient and casting off or starting the ribbing too soon and having a garment that's not quite as long as I need it to be. So I'm really working to be responsible and be patient and knit this as long as it actually needs to be. So this pattern calls for a worsted weight yarn actually, and I'm knitting with a DK, but I'm going for a more fitted sweater than the pattern is actually meant to be. It's meant to be quite oversized. My sister-in-law knit this and she knit it to pattern, and it's definitely a little bit bigger, a little more cozy, but honestly, I don't always love an oversized pattern, and I wanted something that was a little bit more fitted, and that's what this is turning out to be, which is great. I think I'm a little off gauge. I'm a little tighter than she is, which is fine. And again, my yarn's a little smaller. Again, not a big deal, but it definitely means that I'm getting a more fitted sweater, which is exactly what I was looking for. So that's great. I'm anticipating something that will look really timeless and really chic. When I picture it, I think of like someone at a ski resort who's like unbundled after skiing. I don't know. You probably didn't need that mental image that I've got in my head, but that's what I'm picturing when I picture this sweater finished. But yeah, really fitted. The armholes aren't very deep, which is great. Again, avoiding this issue, and I'm really, really enjoying the look that I'm getting out of it so far. I've tried it on a couple of times. Love the fit. I anticipate it will probably grow a little bit in blocking, but hopefully nothing extreme. I am prepared. I'm partially knitting it a little bit longer because I anticipate I'll gain some width, which is totally fine. It'll still be reasonably fitted, but I don't want to lose more length than I've really budgeted for. So I'm trying to make sure that it's just a little bit longer than I think it needs to be, because I have noticed that when you block things, I tend to lose more length and gain more width than I do gain a lot of length. It does depend on the garment. Some garments grow a lot in length, especially if they're in superwash, which this is not. But yeah, I'm trying to make sure I'm smart about that and that I don't knit something that's too short. So that is my Amy sweater. I don't know if there's any details I haven't covered. I did talk about this in my last podcast, so if you watched that, you would have heard most of the things about this pattern, like the stats and whatnot. I believe I'm knitting the large when she typically says for my bust I should knit the 2XL, but like I said, we're going for a fitted version, and honestly I tend to disregard recommended sizes at this point and just look at how much ease I want out of the piece. And I understand that doing that means I'm likely not going to get the exact same fit as the designer in the picture, and I'm just learning to think critically about, like, what do I want the sweater to look like? What ways will reducing the ease affect this? How is it going to look if I drastically change how much ease there is? Is something in the construction not going to work for me anymore? Do I have to make any other modifications? Sometimes you make a modification and it spirals and you realize, oh, I've got to modify something else. And then there's this, and then there's that. And all of a sudden you have a totally different sweater. So I am careful when I modify, but I have noticed that I just tend to disregard recommended ease and just go with the amount of ease I think I'll like. So that's that. It is a 20 stitch by 30 row gauge over 4 inches in stockinette. And I love this sweater so far. I can see myself knitting another one at some point. I really enjoy it. I love the roll neck turtleneck. I think that's really great. You'll also notice I spin my chair pretty regularly. I fidget almost everywhere I am, and I'm almost always moving my feet, so that's how I'm spinning my chair. If that bothers you, I apologize. It just tends to be one of my quirks. So that's that. But that is my first work in progress. That is my Amy sweater, and definitely not getting the most attention, but it's getting some. We're chugging along. I'm hoping by the next podcast it will be a finished object, but we shall see how much work I put into it and if that's something I can actually accomplish. I do love the yarn. I've worked with Barocco Vintage before, actually in the Semper sweater that I talked about, and I love the yarn. It wears beautifully. It's really affordable. Probably going to be in my rotation a lot over the coming years. I just find it's a really affordable option for someone who's definitely knitting on a budget. And for me, knitting is about a lot of different things. I do try to be sustainable. I do try to shop small, but I can't always afford that. And I think there's something to be said for kind of finding that balance. I still use Amazon, and I still buy from big chains and shop at places like Walmart. But at the same time, when I can make more sustainable choices, I try to. It's kind of finding that balance between something where, like, I knit for my mental health, and I knit for stress relief, and I knit for dexterity and mental stimulation. So there's a lot of good things that knitting is for me that's not just about being sustainable in regards to environmentally friendly. I think we should take care of the earth. I think we should be mindful of our choices, but I think sometimes being mindful of our choices doesn't always mean making the most small business friendly and environmental choice. I don't think that's realistic. I think if you have the resources to do that, you should. But I also think it's not really my place to tell someone what they should and shouldn't do. If sustainability to you means always shopping small and always shopping local and always avoiding anything that's not a natural fiber, then more power to you. But if that's not sustainable for you, or that's not what you feel is a priority for you, then that's something that you have to come to terms with for yourself. I can't tell you where you should or shouldn't shop, what you should or shouldn't buy, what you should or shouldn't knit with. Like if someone came to me and said, all I can knit with is whatever acrylic is on sale from Michael's, but I really feel like this is helping my mental health, then like I'd be more keen to say go knit. And when you can, maybe make some different choices if you're able. But if not, like, knitting is better, I think, than fast fashion. I think some people have tried to argue that knitting is fast fashion. I don't think so. I think even if you're cranking out a sweater every 2 weeks or even every week, there's so much more to it than just clicking add to cart on a really unethical, I'm not gonna name names, I'm not gonna try and call anyone out, but I think if that's your choice between a fast fashion brand and knitting your own sweater from fibers that are natural, I think that's fine. I think that's okay. Just my take. Really weird tangent based on the yarn choice that I have, but I've wanted to touch on that before. I think it's an important thing to talk about, and I think there should always be an open dialogue about what is sustainable and what is realistic and what kind of standard we should hold ourselves to. So if you have a different take, or you maybe want to challenge me on something, I'm really open to hearing that in a respectful point of view. And if I've said something that really bugs you and you kind of want to have a dialogue about, I'm always open to chatting about that, whether that be on Instagram or in the comments. Yeah, happy to hear your take on that and what that looks like for you. So, oh, my yarn balls are falling off my lap. I definitely need like a little table right next to me, which I don't have right now, to put things on because my lap is not big enough. But this is my next work in progress. This is never featured on the podcast before. I just cast it on pretty recently. I want to say like a couple of days ago. I'm trying to get it situated on my lap so it doesn't... Oh, now I lost a yarn ball. It's fine. It's a lost cause. We'll pick them up later. But this is my Pinassa sweater. This is a circular yoke top-down sweater. This I'm using a red and a white. So the red's my contrast color, the white is my main color. It wasn't intended to be a Christmas sweater. It seems to be turning into that, but I think I could get away with it year round, which is honestly really something I value in a sweater, is its versatility. If I can wear this after Christmas, that's really good, because our winter tends to go till about, I want to say March is definitely still sweater weather, sometimes April, it kind of depends on when it warms up. But this is turning out beautifully. I'm wondering about my color dominance, because I've found that when I'm knitting with two colors, I've found that because I knit continental, they recommend you hold your main color in your, or you hold the color you want to pop in your, for maybe my left hand, and your contrast or your other color that you don't want to maybe stand out so much in your right hand. It's really, I'm trying to make sure I got that right. And normally like this hand would be more dominant and this hand would be more background. I've found that it tends to be better to reverse that, and so I hold my color that I want to pop in this hand, in my right hand, and then in my left hand I hold my background color. I'm kind of fiddling with that this project. to see if I really believe that's the case. And I haven't, honestly, I've switched once and I don't really notice a difference. I don't know if you can, but I've not seen one where it's really evident where I've switched. So I do think that one of my yarns is just a little bit thinner, even though they're both what I think is a sport weight yarn. I definitely only swatched in stockinette stitch and with my white, because I couldn't figure out, they didn't have a chart for the gauge swatch, so I couldn't figure out exactly what I was supposed to be knitting, and I really was anxious to cast this on, so I was definitely cutting some corners. So I didn't catch that in a gauge swatch. I don't really think it makes a huge difference. Like, I was talking to my husband and he's like, honestly, I don't think it makes a big difference either. Like, I don't really notice anything. He's like, I think it still looks really cute. And honestly, I agree. I think it looks adorable. Definitely feel like the lighting is a little bit different now. I had to go take a quick dinner break, and it's Alberta and it's winter. So it is 6:08 and it is pitch dark outside. So I'm really happy to have another light in front of me so that at least doesn't look like it's pitch dark in here. But if you noticed a change in lighting, I have a frog in my throat too. Okay, I think I can talk now, so that's good. But yeah, we were talking about my Pinassa sweater, which is actually my first circular yoke sweater. So that's the construction. It's a top-down circular yoke. So this is where we're at. And you're starting to see the, oh gosh, I just keep dropping it. It's still quite small and it's quite difficult to hold well. Let me bring that in a little bit closer so you can see. There's definitely some visible increases and some puckering. I'm hoping that blocks out reasonably well. But yeah, that's where we're at so far. And this is currently being knit. I feel like it's on the recommended needles as well. But it could be wrong. Oh, no, I am wrong. So this is supposed to be knit. Where am I? No, I'm not really sure anymore. Okay, I am knitting this on the recommended needles, but I'm knitting a size down. That's why, because I didn't get gauge with the recommended needles when I knit in stockinette. I was quite a bit looser than the gauge that was called for in the pattern. It calls for 26 stitches and 32 rows with a sport weight yarn, and I am using, behind me here, Durum Natura Ulyss, which was initially earmarked for a Chantal sweater. I'll talk about that in a moment. It is not being used for that anymore. And then I'm also using Juniper Moon Farms Patagonia in the organic merino. And this says it's a DK weight, but it really does knit up more like a sport weight. And so I'm holding these two for this sweater. Yeah, this is 100% wool. The Ulyss is 100% wool. This is actually organic merino raised in Argentina, which is pretty cool. And it's this gorgeous deep red color called Cardinal is the color name. And Ulyss is a white, and the color name is Sel, as in salt, in French. So I have 3 skeins of this, and I bought it quite a while ago, not really realizing that I would need more, because initially I bought it thinking it was a DK weight yarn. I didn't know a lot about like the weight of a yarn versus the yardage per gram, and so when I didn't think anything of the fact that this is 100 grams but 350 meters, which is just more than you would normally get from a DK weight. You'd normally get somewhere around like the 250 meter or 265 meters rather than 350. So not knowing that, I only picked up 3 skeins. I was like 1100 should be enough to get something a little bit on the snug side. It's only $18.75, or at least it was at the time. It was only $18.75 per skein, which is a great price. And had I known that it was more sport weight, I think then I would have bought maybe a 4th or 5th skein. 4 probably would have been fine. That would have been about 1,300 meters. I definitely could have gotten a sweater out of that. But I only bought 3, which left me in a bit of an awkward spot because it's more than I would need for a slipover. And I honestly didn't see a lot of slipovers that I liked that were sport weight and that I thought would look good in this color, even though this is probably one of my favorite colors on myself. I love red, and I find like most reds look really good on me unless it's like a yellowy red, like Even then though, I find they have I have good success with that color and my skin tone. Like even just putting it below my skin, you can kind of see that my cheeks are a little bit rosier. It doesn't wash me out, whereas obviously some colors do. But yeah, so I was in a bit of a bind because I didn't really know what to do with this. I didn't really feel like I had a lot that this would work for. I considered the Poppy Tee by Petite Knit, but at the time, the construction was definitely a little daunting to me. I think it's a contiguous construction. I think it's the same construction as the Eva cardigan, and I wasn't super comfortable with that at the time, so it never really materialized. And then I started second guessing, do I really want a 100% wool tee? Is that really going to be wearable? I still flip-flop on that. I have a 100% superwash wool tee, and I do wear it, but it is warm, so it maybe gets less wear than something that's cotton wood. So like there was a lot of speed bumps with this yarn, and I really couldn't figure out what to do with it. So I saw this sweater, and I honestly don't think I'll need more than one skein. And I had previously tried to knit something with it, so the cake was already wound, and I just unwound it and left it there. So I might still be left with 2 skeins of this. If you have suggestions, I'm open to them because I don't really know what to do with this anymore. It's wonderful yarn, but I feel like it might just be doomed, or not doomed. Sounds so bad. It might just end up being color work yarn for me, in that every time I use this yarn it's going to be a contrast color, and I'm not really opposed to that. It's a really beautiful color. I think there's a lot I could do with this in regards to color work. But yeah, if you have suggestions for 2 skeins of Patagonia by excuse me, I have like hiccups or something. Ooh. Juniper Moon Farms Patagonia in color cardinal. I have 2 more skeins of this that I honestly don't think will get touched, because I'm only through like a partial, I'm like maybe through a third of a skein just for this yoke, and it's only color, oh that's the inside, that's not helpful. It's only obviously a color work yoke. You'll have seen a picture of the pattern on the screen somewhere at some point. If you haven't, you will. I don't know when editing Celeste will put that in. But I'm partway through the yoke. I'm not quite halfway, but I'm getting there. And I still have quite a bit of yarn left in that first skein, so it's not going to need more than 1, I think. And yeah, the rest is just going to be stockinette in the white color, which honestly I think is going to look so good, so classy, very timeless and fun for the holidays. So far, I'm really liking this. And this is by Elena Soleil Jansa. Oh, I think I mispronounced that. I think I butchered it, but it's okay. And yeah, it calls for a sport weight yarn. She looks like she used Zola Pastorita. Again, I butchered that. It's okay. And she's got, it looks like 10 sizes ranging from 82 centimeters to 172 centimeters. So it's a pretty size inclusive pattern with a good amount of ease. It's top down circular yoke sweater, and then for certain sizes, there's raglan increases as well. So it's a little bit of a combination there, which I think will be good for the fit. It does have short rows in the back, so that's great. Again, you want that back to just be a little bit higher so that it's not choking you in the front, I guess would probably be the best way to describe it. And yeah, I'm knitting it on 3.5 millimeter needles, but instead of knitting a size 5, which I think was the recommended size for me, which would be 122 centimeters in circumference, or I guess the size I was initially aiming to do. Am I saying that right? Yeah, no, I got confused, and I started thinking like, oh wait, I'm knitting off gauge. I'm used to knitting a lot tighter than most designers. It's rare for me to knit looser, so it was weird to be able to size down when I was off gauge instead of sizing up, which I feel like is what I normally have to do. So sizing down, using the recommended needles, I'm hoping to get something in between a 4 and a 5. But yeah, this is honestly really easy to memorize each row. Like I usually have to check the chart for the first repeat. I have every repeat separated by a stitch marker. You can't really see them from here, but every yellow mark is a repeat. And usually if I learn the first 2, I can stop looking at the chart for the rest of the round. And then you can also just reference the previous sections if you forget. So I find that really efficient, and I don't really have any trouble remembering anything. I don't feel like I constantly have to have the chart open. I can knit on this, and I have knit on this during a hockey game or while I'm out. Like we went to an education night, I guess, at the church regarding marriage, and we were just waiting for it to start, and so I was working on this, and honestly, like, it was so easy and it wasn't difficult at all to remember anything or to figure anything out. I didn't get stuck. I knit on this in the car because, again, we're those people that are chronically early, so we're always so nervous about being late, which means we then budget so much time just in case, like, I don't know, an earthquake happens, or the car completely dies, or, you know, we run over an animal. Like, we would still get to wherever we're going on time if everything went wrong, which usually everything doesn't go wrong, so we end up really, really early. And so that's what happened last night. We were there like 20 minutes, maybe 30 before it started, and we're like, okay, now what do we do? So thankfully I had the foresight to bring my knitting, but yeah, I was knitting in the car. I was knitting in before the little session that we were at, and really easy to do. So aside from the color dominance issues I've been having, which definitely are giving me pause, I'm still knitting on it. I think it'll still be just fine. I think the Patagonia is just a little bit thinner than the Ulyss, so it's kind of, it's either that or it's a tighter spin. I don't know really anything about like even worsted or woolen spun. Like, I know there's two different kinds of, or at least two different kinds of way to spin yarn. I don't know anything about them. I've never really had a ton of interest in spinning. Not to say I won't pick it up at some point, but currently it hasn't really grabbed me. I've more been looking at embroidery and cross stitches potential. I'm leaning more towards embroidery out of those two. So embroidery, sewing, and knitting, I think, are going to be my primary fiber arts for the foreseeable future. That being said, I change my mind all the time. It's not rare by any stretch. So I could very well decide like tomorrow that spinning is up my alley and go and try and make that happen. But currently it's not on the docket for anything I'm gonna try and learn in the near future. I am putting together a list of things, and I just started today, but I think it'll take me some time to finesse. Hopefully not too long, because it's 26 things I want to do before 2026. I saw someone do like an Instagram reel about this where they discussed that every year they sit down, like November 1st, they sit down with a cup of coffee and they list out all sorts of like one-off things. Not like, oh, I'm gonna start working out. It's not like resolutions. It's more just like one-off things. Like, I'm going to, for me, like one of the ones I thought of was I'm gonna bake sugar cookies because I love doing that in the holidays. And so you pick like things you could do in one sitting, and you make a list of 26 things that you feel like will leave you going into like the next year feeling really refreshed, feeling really like in the best mindset possible, basically the best headspace for the new year. So I was looking at like, I have some time off around Christmas from my job, so like what are some things I can do to make it so that I'm entering the new year and like the new fiscal year at work with like a better mindset. Like, how am I refreshing myself? How am I de-stressing? How am I, you know, filling my own cup and filling others' cups? Like, are there things I can be doing around like holidays to like give more to other people that don't have as much as I do? Or even just if I can't give financially, give of my time. Yeah, so just trying to reflect on how I can enter the new year in like the best headspace and like spiritual space possible. So that's definitely been something I've started. And so there's, I think, there's actually a couple of projects I'm considering putting on that list. So not necessarily one sitting, but one definitive goal. Like, not I'm gonna knit more socks, it's I'm gonna finish a specific pair of socks, specifically my husband's socks, because they're long overdue and I should have finished them ages ago, and I'm really hoping they're at least done so I can put them under the tree. But we'll see if I get there. I don't know. But the other one is like start sewing, like a new project. I want to start at least one more project before the year is out. So that's been something I've kind of been thinking about and reflecting on. I turned 25 this year, and that was a really wild milestone in the sense, like nothing wild happened, but I don't know, there's something about turning 25, and like up until 25 you're just getting farther from 20, but all of a sudden 25 hit and I was like, I'm getting closer to 30 now, and that's kind of wild. And there was, you know, things in my life I thought I'd be doing by 30 or well by 25, and just reconciling with that. So I really want to go into 2026 with a lot of intentionality and reflection and less stress. Because honestly, stress seems like the silent killer in society. I'm currently reading, or actually doing a video study on a book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and it's just talking about like the epidemic that is hurry in our society, and like what that does to a person and to your mindset and your spirit and that kind of thing. And that's been really interesting. So I feel like going into 2026, one of the things I want to prioritize is slowing down and being more intentional and more mindful of how I'm spending my time, how much scrolling I'm doing. That's a killer for me. And I honestly think these videos are great because it just gives me 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever the case may be, to just sit down and talk about something I'm currently doing to recharge. And I think that's a really beneficial thing for my mental health. And hopefully I am relatable enough that someone finds it interesting or gets some good patterns from it. But I feel like if nothing else, this is probably a really good way for me to process a lot of information. And that was a huge tangent, so you get those. I feel like it'd be almost impossible to try to cut out tangents from a knitting podcast. I don't know how I'd make one without a tangent or two. And I only had 2 projects to talk about and one thing that I'm wearing, so it kind of worked out that I went on a couple of tangents. But that is about it. I don't have any acquisitions, and I feel like I've talked about most of my future plans, and any plans that I have come up with in the recent, like the last 2 weeks since I filmed, are gift knits or gifts of some form. I'm trying to lean into some handmade gifts for Christmas, and I have some ideas, and I hope to be able to show you them in the new year, but I don't want to talk about them quite yet because there are people who watch my podcast that would be receiving them, and I don't want to spoil the surprise. So if you have any recommendations for gifts that you think are great to hand make for other people, especially people where maybe they're hard to buy for, I would be open to some suggestions, so please feel free to put that in the comments. Otherwise, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. I'm so happy when every new subscriber joins. It's really encouraging, and I really love building community. And so if you want to comment what you were knitting on, what you were working on while you watched, that would be incredible. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.